Now, US President Joe Biden will travel to New Orleans next week in the wake of this week's terror attack. The FBI says it believes the terrorist suspect was inspired by ISIS, as James Matthews explains.
Bourbon Street back in business.
Hot jambalaya.
14 flowers remembered 14 victims. So did patrons in prayer. Supporters in town for a college football game did it their way.
Terrorism is not going to stop us from living.
Metal wedges are now on pavements that a terrorist used to steer around temporary barricades. 36 hours on, 36 hours too late. Newly released camera footage shows a fresh angle on the incident as it unfolded, the chaos and the carnage. The FBI's latest assessment is that the attacker Shamsuddin Jabbar acted alone, and that there was no connection between the New Orleans attack and an exploding Tesla Cybertruck in Las Vegas. They've released images of Jabbar in the street just over an hour before he carried out his attack, and a picture of one of the coolers he placed containing an improvised explosive device. And they've told how he posted videos to social media on his way to commit murder and spoke of his support for ISIS.
In the first video, Jabbar explains he originally planned to harm his family and friends, but was concerned the news headlines would not focus on the, quote, war between the believers and the disbelievers, end quote.
They'd worked overnight to clear Bourbon Street, where a terrorist murder ended when he crashed into a crane and was shot dead. Questions persist about the security measures that failed to prevent mass murder. Questions we put to the New Orleans police chief.
Madam, do you acknowledge that you let the victims down by not having an appropriate security plan?
Oh, that's not the correct. That's not correct. We would disagree with that. We had a
plan that allowed an attacker to drive into a crowd.
And I take exception to that, and I do not agree with that.
That has to be a failure.
We do know that people have lost their lives, but if you're experienced with terrorism, you would not be asking that question.
Well, with respect, experience of terrorism surely requires appropriate security protection.
We are learning more about the victims, people who'd come to party in the centre of New Orleans and crossed a terrorist path.
The last thing that we ever said to each other, he told me he loved me, so.
Jack Besh lost his brother Martin, nicknamed Tiger, here on the left. He made a FaceTime call to an emergency room as doctors fought but failed to save his brother.
He couldn't respond to any of us, but he could hear us. I truly believe he could hear us. His eyes were closed and he was on a machine, but I know he could hear us. God kept his heartbeat beating for a reason, and I believe it was so that me and my family could tell him goodbye. You couldn't even fit in the room. There were so many doctors in there. And they said they did everything they possibly could, and he fought so hard. God was calling him home.
It is the iconic street, the old part of New Orleans in the fabled French Quarter. Bourbon Street has the rich associations of this city's past. Its music, its culture, entertainment. Bourbon Street is the best of New Orleans.
Here, sadly, they have seen its worst. James Matthews, Sky News, in Bourbon Street, New Orleans.